Dark clouds fill the sky. The rumbles of thunder come down from the mountains, and children won't stop ringing our doorbell. Halloween is finally upon us. Hello everyone, this is your creepy host Matt here. I had to take a break from the main story to present you with this special. Don't worry, it doesn't fit into the continuity of the rest of the series, so if you're new to it, you won't be completely lost. Without further ado, I give to you the Redhill Halloween Special. The day was unseasonably warm for Avon, Maine. My brother Zach and I had been working all day getting the lawn cut and chores done so we could help Serena with the pool shed off the side of the house. We all had a love for Halloween and wanted to do something great this year, so we decided to turn the shed into a haunted house. Plastic skeletons and paper ghosts littered the outside, along with a sign that proclaimed, "Trespassers will be eaten." Unfortunately, as fun as that theme was, it was also true. We took extra precautions and double-chained the bulk doors to the cellar, but we couldn't be responsible for those that got lost. It's pretty unlikely that it would happen, but Captain Bubbles would eat the children in a heartbeat. To his credit, though, the added effect of having an actual ghoul bang on the doors from down below would be a bonus. Even Uncle Bob was getting into the spirit, as much as a ghost can, I suppose. He's been walking around talking about back in the day when kids didn't need parents to go trick-or-treating, and how most of the treats used to be homemade. Nobody worried about being poisoned or stabbed with a razor blade when biting into a red delicious. It's pretty cool to hear about how things used to be, when holes in a bedsheet was a popular costume, but I'm starting to get concerned about our beer supply. I can't tell you for sure, but I think the fact that it's Halloween makes his form more solid. He almost looks like he did when he was alive, and he isn't floating around all over the place. He also isn't leaving a trail of beer on the ground everywhere he goes. I could be wrong, but he might even be a little drunk. Something to do with the veil of the dead and all that. Finally, we were close to being finished. Kids would come in and Zach would jump out dressed as a roast turkey and scare them. They could get some punch and candy and be on their way out the back door. Serena was dressed as a witch, donning a purple hat with entirely too much glitter, and was tasked with handing out the treats. I would be the one to lead them out. My costume was the best, by the way. I was dressed as Edgar Allan Poe. Twice, Zach asked why I was dressed like Gomez Adams, so I just learned to ignore it. Serena went back outside to check on the decorations one last time, and I got a great idea. I went over to the side of the woodpile and hurried over Zach and Uncle Bob. "All right, when she comes back in, don't make any noise. On my signal, we'll jump out and scare the hell out of her." "Haha, sounds good, man. I haven't heard her scream since we were kids, and I threw that spider in her hair," laughed Zach. "I think she was the one that threw the spider in your hair, and that was also you screaming," chuckled Bob. Before Zach had a chance to defend himself, the door opened up again and I shushed them both. "I think I see people," she started, then stopped, seeing the shed was empty. She began walking around with a confused look on her face, and when she came close, I silently counted off my hand. 1, 2, 3 was all I could get out. The ground beneath us quickly opened up, pulling the three of us down with it. We landed on soft dirt in a shallow pool of water, thankfully, and Serena began to call out. "Don't come near it," I yelled. "You could end up falling in too. Just go get help from the fire department," I yelled up. But they won't come here anymore since Zack burned down that family of scarecrows for fun, she replied. Ah, damn it. That's right. Police are out. I guess maybe an ambulance? Fuck it. Go get Melvin and Sheena, I yelled back. All right, I'll be back soon. Just hang on, guys, she yelled. The sound of chains rustled and the cellar doors slammed hard. Serena screamed for a moment. Then it was silent once more. Haha, that ghoul of yours sure is priceless, said Uncle Bob. Bob, why are you still down here? Can't you fly? Asked Zack. Normally, but I think I'm too full of beer. I ain't felt this alive since I died here. Zack, your arm, I said, looking over in horror. It was snapped between the wrist and elbow, and the bone was sticking clean through, dangling there by loose skin. In a grotesque show, he pulled it off, meat and skin snapping apart like a rubber band, and then tossed it aside. What the hell, man? What did you just do? Oh, relax. None of this is canon, he chuckled, pushing his real arm through the sleeve. All right. Well, we're stuck in a sinkhole. What do you guys think we should do? I asked. It's Halloween. There's only one thing we can do. Ghost stories, said Bob, nodding matter-of-factly. So we huddled together in a circle, sitting in the soggy water, and Zack began to speak. All right, I got one that'll really knock your socks off. I call it the Circle of Death. Zack opened his eyes. The room was blurred, and the light coming in through the windows was blinding. He fumbled around the table for his lighter. Nothing like a morning pre-roll to shake the cobwebs off. He claimed his prize and pulled a slightly crumpled joint from his shirt pocket. After sparking it up and taking a few deep puffs, he began to look around the room. What the hell happened here? Hey, Matty! The room was in complete disarray. Photos knocked from the wall. Chairs splintered and strewn about. Definite signs a struggle had taken place. No answer from Matt. Zack decided to check for him upstairs. Oh shit! A huge pool of blood lay at the foot of the stairs. How many people had contributed to this lake? There was no choice but to walk through it. Crimson footprints marked each step going up. He wasn't the first to come through here. He raced up the stairs and over to Matt's door, slamming his massive frame into it. He tore through it like construction paper. There was no resistance whatsoever, and he nearly crashed into the opposing wall. Matt and Serena were startled awake. What the hell, Zack? You're fixing that door! You alright? Thanks, sweet baby Jesus. I thought you guys were goners. And the door was like that when I got here. And also, the door's not my problem. Serena yawned loudly and spoke up. Slow down, little buddy. What do you mean, not the only problem? There's a puddle of blood at the bottom of the stairs big enough to swim in. I think we gotta get out of here, guys. Slow down, Zack. Let's go check it out. Can you give us a minute? Hell no. I'm not going out there alone. You ever see those movies? Fine, whatever. Just close your eyes, would you? Matt gave a nod to Serena as Zack closed his eyes. They both got up and got dressed as quickly as they could. All right, bro, you're good. Let's get out of here. The three of them emerged from the room. Zack, being the largest, led the pack. Coast is clear, guys. Let's head. They hastily crept down the hallway and reached the top of the stairs. Holy shit! You weren't kidding! Surprised the ducks haven't moved in, said Serena. There's someone or something that is probably gonna kill us if it finds us, and you're talking about ducks? Real nice, Serena. Real nice. Ladies first, Serena giggled as she pushed past the brothers and made her way down the stairs. Zack and Matt stared dazed for a moment before making their way down. Serena reached the bottom and turned up to say something to them. Her words never made their mark, however. Blood erupted from her neck, and her head was pulled back. An invisible blade carved back and forth as her head was jerked around violently. After a few gruesome moments, the blade cut clean through her spine, and her body fell limp. The head was suspended in midair, raining blood down as it fed the already swollen puddle. Zach and Matt turned and ran back upstairs. Uncle Bob's room seemed like the best option. It also had the only escape on the second floor. They stormed into his room and slammed the door behind them. Zach began stacking furniture in front of the door as Matt looked around for something, anything to defend themselves with. He approached the door that randomly led outside and was puzzled by what he saw. There in the door were dozens of tally marks, 69 to be exact, all scratched into the wood. Zach, what's happening? Serena, she's dead, Zach! What the fuck is happening? His heart pumped loudly in his ears. Zach? Matt turned to look at his brother. Zach stood with his shoulder pressed against the dresser he had dragged in front of the door. A fog rolled off his body much like dry ice. Matt got closer and felt the warmth drain from his face. Zach was covered in ice. An expression of fear stuck frozen on his face. An eerie creak began from the door. Matt began taking steps back. 1 step, 2 steps. The creaking grew louder. 3 steps. Then bang! The door and makeshift barricade, along with his brother, shattered into a million icy shards. Matt backed up against the door leading to the roof, tears stinging the spots on his cheeks from where the ice had cut into him. As the ice settled, he could make out a figure looking into the doorway. It was almost human, but distorted and much too large. It slowly crept forward. Matt shook with fear. He felt for the doorknob to try and make his escape, but it wasn't there. He turned to look for it, but it was as if there had never been one at all. He turned back to face the creature. It was closer now, less than a moment at this rate. For some odd reason, this all felt so familiar. The fear gradually evaporated, leaving another feeling in its place. Deja vu. With each step the creature took, it became more and more clear. This had all happened before, and would all happen again. Matt retrieved his pocket knife and opened it. He turned to face the door once more and etched a line crossing the last 4 marks. Guess that makes 70. He felt a strong, clawed hand on his shoulder and hot breath on his neck. He closed his eyes and placed the knife back in his pocket. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Zach finished his story, and we could all hear the sound of something being scraped in the distance. Serena? Zach yelled. There was no reply. The scratching continued, but we just resumed our stories. That was actually pretty good, Zach, I admitted. Thanks. I used that time I almost died in the old folks' home as inspiration. Evil place. Well, I've been telling you kids history all night. I suppose one more story couldn't hurt. I don't really got a name for it, but most folks didn't give titles to their stories back then. But I guess you could call it The Gathering of the Dead. It's been pretty quiet around here for the past few years, other than the occasional spirit passing through. The house was built in 1820, and many generations have come and gone. In old times, people didn't leave home much, so most died at home and were buried nearby. Oftentimes, the grave markers were forgotten or lost track over time. Who knows how many souls you disturb by just mowing the lawn? I've met up with probably a dozen spirits here. Some are silent and just whisk around, not really wanting to be seen. Others are loud with sounds or actions trying to rid the place of the living that disturb them. There are also child spirits, still playful and impish even in death. I guess they don't know the scope of what happened to them. Halloween seems to be an active time for the spirits. They all come out at once, so you get a variety of activity. A few years back, I was watching the news and I heard a baby crying upstairs. I knew there were no people living or animals in the house, but I had to go take a look. I found nothing up there, but heard a ruckus downstairs. I came down, and the kitchen table had been moved to the center of the room. The spare leaf had been put in the center to make it bigger, and every chair and stool in the house were gathered around it, even my damn recliner. I decided that if they were going to have a gathering, probably I ought to go out to town for the night and let them have at it. It was nearly 7 on a Friday night, so the local bar was starting to get a crowd. Mind you, it's a small town, so a crowd consists of 20 people. The entertainment was just a pool table, some drunk characters, and a jukebox, and later on some of the drunks trying to sing karaoke. I'm pretty quiet, so I just got a pitcher of beer and took it to an empty booth on the side. Many times I went there to kick ass in pool tournaments, but tonight, there were just a bunch of young punks playing that didn't even know what end of the table to break from. After half my pitcher was gone, an old friend Eileen came in. She got herself a ginger ale at the bar and came back and sat down in my booth. "What brings you down off the hill?" she asked. I proceeded to tell her about what happened at the house. She was quite interested, because she had messed around with the spirit world for quite some time. Rumors had long circulated in town that she was a witch. We had dated some when we were younger, a few good times in the sack, but never really went beyond that. She wanted to come back to the house with me with hopes of meeting some spirits. I finished my pitcher and we went to my car. Drinking and driving wasn't a big thing back then. Cops are only involved when things went bad. Other than that, you were responsible for your own actions, and no one else butted into your business. I sure do miss those times. Once, a few friends and I slow-rolled my van into someone's backyard in town beside the cemetery. We fired the beer cans into the bushes, and 3 friends took off on 1 foot. The county sheriff deputy eventually came, didn't even get out of his car. He shined a spotlight on the upside-down van, asked if anyone got hurt, and said, "Get it out of there, boys." We walked the 5 miles home, getting back about midnight. The next day, we went back with my brother in his Impala, pushed the van up right by hand, and dragged it home with his car. Eileen and I got back to the house. There's a glow coming from the kitchen windows. I know that I hadn't left anything turned on. I unlocked the front door and we went inside. The chairs were still around the table with a faint glow in each one. There was a low humming sound, like they were all chanting together slowly. I reached for the light switch beside the door, but nothing happened when I flicked it on. By now, Eileen had gone over and knelt beside the recliner to listen to their low chant. I decided to go back to the car and get my flashlight. When I returned, Eileen met me outside the door. "It's kind of weird," she said. "It's like they having a seance to keep the living out of the house." "Well, they better learn this is my house now," I said. I went to the bulkhead in the shed and down into the cellar. Sure enough, the main had been switched off in the power panel. I turned it back on and heard quite a commotion on the floor above. I went back out front and saw that the kitchen light was now on. Eileen and I went back inside and were surprised that the table and chairs were all back in their places and the spare leaf was out of the table. Eileen talked me into having our own little seance. I agreed on the condition that I could have a beer at the same time. She lit a couple candles and turned the lights off and proceeded to do her own low chants. After 10 minutes, she was just finishing up when a coffee cup fell out of the cupboard and smashed on the floor. She said that the spirits were trying one last attempt to scare us off. She finished her last chant and blew out the candles. I turned the light back on, and she said that the spirits shouldn't bother too much anymore, but there might be a stray one now and then. She said she had one last chant to protect me, so I said okay. "Spirits of the house, let this man be. I command you. This promise keep. For all his time, let him sleep." I said, "Well then, sleep sounds like a good idea." She agreed and asked if she could crash on the couch. I said, of course, and the night was quiet after that. There hasn't been much spirit activity here since that night. When he was done speaking, Zach and I slowly looked over to each other, our eyes wide, and we locked sight. "Ah!" we both screamed, hugging each other in a mock show of terror. "I hate to say it, but that was about as lame as soggy toast, Uncle Bob," Zach said. "Yeah, I mean, it was good, but it wasn't all that scary," I said. Just as the words left my lips, we could hear things being rapidly moved around the house. There were murmurs, like people talking and laughing, and I swear I could hear a baby crying. "Oh, don't mind them. They're just having their annual get-together. You go ahead and tell your spooky tale, Matt," he said with a chuckle. All right. Well, I guess it's my turn now. I call it FRANKENZACK. The sun had set not too long ago, and darkness overtook the cemetery. Everything was all grainy and in black and white, as color hadn't been invented yet. Not a single soul, living or dead, could be heard, only the sound of the shovel scraping into the dirt again and again. "Damn it, bro. Why'd you have to try and teach that moose remedial Spanish?" Matt hissed to himself. He continued to dig until he hit the casket. Brushing the dirt aside, he lifted the heavy 3-foot coffin out of the hole and onto the grass above. Letting out a sigh, he climbed out and brought it over to the truck, tossing it unceremoniously in the bed. With that, he left and went back to the house. After lugging the coffin upstairs and onto the roof of the pool shed outside of Uncle Bob's room, Matt kicked the top off, revealing the small figure inside. It was a great thing the circus was in town that week. Being such a small population, deaths were scarce and fresh bodies were hard to come by. It was by a stroke of luck that the lion went feral that day. The lion tamer whipped the creature one too many times, and the clown who stood near it had his legs ripped to shreds. It was unfortunate that he was also a midget, but beggars can't be choosers. He glanced over to Zach's ruined body once more before cutting open the little man's skull. Matt took the brain out, making a wet pop as the stem detached, then tossed it aside. Taking Zach's brain, he shoved it inside, then closed it up. The legs were really a problem, so he decided to swap them around too. "Wait, this is like next level surgeon stuff you're talking here. How are you just gonna swap them out like it's a Mr. Potato Head?" asked Zach. "Will you be quiet? Just don't worry about it," I shot back. So the body and the brain finally together, Matt continued his dark work and raised the table. It was only a couple feet up, as he didn't have an actual lab to work with, but he stepped back and waited. Thunder had been promised tonight in the forecast, and while the sky was full of clouds, they continued to drift on by in the peaceful night. "Are you kidding me?" Matt yelled. "I spent all day at a frickin' circus tent dealing with other people's terrible children, suddenly shooting a lion in the ass with a pellet pistol, and dug up a midget clown's body for the weather to be wrong? No, you're gonna give me lightning like you promised, goddammit!" No sooner did he say the words, a bolt of lightning blasted down out of nowhere. Matt fell on his ass and quickly got up to put out the small fires around the roof. Heat streamed off of the body before him, and slowly the hands started to twitch. The torso began to rise as its eyes opened to stare down at Matt. Letting out a moan, Matt nearly jumped out of his skin, seeing the thing before him. "It worked! I can't believe it! I mean, it's alive! It's alive!" The small frame sat to the edge of the table with its freakishly long Zach legs, then stood up. Altogether, it was about the size of a normal person, but the combination looked so terribly wrong. Before Matt could react, it stumbled forward and fell off the roof. Damn it! I guess I better go get him. Matt ran back into the house and out the door to the shed, but it was already gone. The creature still had Zach's brain and personality, but he was severely dumbed down. He made it to the edge of Phillips and happened upon a little girl. She was playing with her dolly, and seeing the creature, she walked over and offered up her prized possession. FRANKENZACK wasted no time in taking it and booting her into the well. Laughing, he continued on toward Main Street. People saw him emerge from the shadows and began screaming in horror. FRANKENZACK didn't pay it any mind as he went over to the cake shop. Breaking the display window, he proceeded to devour as many confections as he could. His stomach was much smaller than he remembered though, and it equated to about half a cake, so stuffed with a few pieces, he ran toward the apartment complex that housed a few of the town's local whores. Sasha had just stepped out of the shower after another customer left. She sat on the bed, not bothering to put on clothes, and began brushing her long brunette hair. Zach slowly stumbled his way through the door, quietly making his way over to her room. She lifted a mirror to do her makeup and screamed, seeing his horrible, burnt clown face in the mirror. She quickly backed up as she struggled to understand how such a little body could have such long-ass legs. It was true that Zach was part Sasquatch, but she never had time to put the two together. "Friend!" he said, looking over her naked body. His high-pitched voice would be hilarious under normal circumstances. He reached into his back pocket to pull out what cash he had in his wallet and tossed a couple $100 toward her. Not being one to turn down cash, the two proceeded to get busy. Afterward, while smoking a joint, she began to ask him questions like, "Am I pretty?" and "Are you seeing anyone else?" His instincts fired on all cylinders, and he made to leave as fast as possible. She wasn't having it though, and wrapped her arms around him, trying to pull him back. Like a cornered animal, FRANKENZACK lashed out, smacking her to the bed. His tiny hands wrapped around her throat, and as much as she scratched and slapped and almost threw him off, she finally lay still. "Bad! Bad lady!" he yelled in his high-pitched tone. He left her dead body there as he took to the streets, heading to the one place that he knew he would be safe. Unfortunately, word around town had spread, and the townspeople began gathering anything they could find as weapons and carried torches through the streets. FRANKENZACK ran as fast as his freakishly long legs could carry him, which was pretty fast, and finally up ahead his haven came into view. It was The Bull, the local pizza place that Serena used to work at. Not wasting a second, he smashed through the door and struggled to push tables up against it. The two guys working inside were understandably confused when they saw this thing appear inside their establishment. They went up to tell him off and began to growl at them. They laughed as his little arms couldn't quite reach them, and they started pushing him around, back and forth. FRANKENZACK gave mighty screams of anger that were to no avail. Matt, knowing his brother's eating habits, went to the Bull as well. The door was locked, but he knew he was in there. He also knew that in about 5 minutes, there would be an angry mob there as well, and he needed to hurry. He went around the back, and luckily the service entrance was open. Running through the kitchen, he came upon the sight of the two bullies messing with his brother. Anger grew hot in his chest, and Matt threw a can of tomato sauce at one of their heads. Pop! The can exploded in a mess of red, covering not only the cashier, but also his brother. He dropped to the ground like a stone, and the other man ran out the back. "You okay, bro?" Matt asked. "Zach, ugly. Zach, monster," he said sadly. "It's okay, buddy. Matt's here," he said, giving him a hug. Suddenly, the doors began to bang. Outside, they could hear the angry shouts of the mob as they forced their way in. The tables were pushed off from their positions, and the door slowly opened, letting in a stream of people. "There he is! It's the monster! It needs to die!" They all screamed in tandem. They began to make their way forward, knives and other awful weapons raised, and Matt pulled himself between them. "He's not a monster! He's my brother! And you people are gonna leave him alone! You're the real monsters here! All of you with your axes and your fire. Zack is a saint compared to you all. The crowd momentarily stopped their pursuit and seemed to reflect upon Matt's words. Just as he thought they were going to drop their weapons and go home, someone screamed, "Kill him anyway!" Out from the crowd came Molotov cocktails, fire exploding out with them. Matt was trying to pull his brother with him to the back door, but in a high-pitched voice he spoke, "No! Bro, go! Leave Zack here!" Matt tried to convince him to come, to talk him out of it, but the fire was raging, and there was no reasoning with him. With a final shove that was hilariously weaker than it should have been, Matt watched on, completely distraught, as his only brother disappeared into the flames. "Well, that was depressing, Sorry," Zack said. "Like, you didn't even try to get me out of there, you just let me burn." "Yeah, well, that's what you get for playing with the wildlife," Uncle Bob replied. The scratching had persisted. Up to this point, it was becoming even louder. We looked at each other with confused expressions, when finally the wall behind Bob began to open up. "Oh shit, it's Mr. Bubbles," said Zack. The ghoul we had trapped in the basement finally found a way to us. Blood already coated its claws and face, and from the sparkling purple witch hat that sat atop its head, I think I knew why. In a flurry of motion, proceeded to disembowel and tear us all apart. Finally, after all this time, he got to feast on our flesh. And when he was satisfied, he smiled and walked back to the hole he dug. "Happy Halloween!" he exclaimed as he lay down and entered the most peaceful sleep of its undeath.